You're listening to Stellar Success, Leveling Up for Medical Pros with Dr. Tudor Francu. Join us as we explore how medical professionals can achieve stellar success in all areas of life. It's time to level up.
Dr. Greenwood, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
Thanks for coming over all the way from far away Maryland.
Yep. Some days feel further than others, right?
I know. So I want to kind of give the audience a little bit of an overview, if you can. Just, how did you start in medicine? What was your journey, and what are you doing now?
Yeah. So I can honestly say I've wanted to be a physician since I was 8 years old. Um, it was kind of at the time a marriage of loving kids, which is kind of weird to say at 8 because I was a kid, but I just liked babysitting and being around other kids. And I really liked science. I was fortunate enough to have some really great science teachers that very early on made me excited about it. And, I was like, oh, I want to be a doctor when I grow up. And that's kind of how it started. And then I would just little by little would expose myself to more and more things medical. Because looking back, I don't know that you really know what it is to be a doctor when you're until you get into it. And just all through middle school and high school, I was very drawn to biology and was in special science. I had a teacher. There's that movie that came out a number of years back called I think it was School of Rock or something like that. I know Jack Black was in it, and he was kind of the zany teacher. I had a teacher like that would make up songs about mold and in different things, and just carried through. And then I had this really fortunate experience in the county that I lived in, still live in. They had something called the mentor program, and that program was a program that basically took high schoolers and matched them with a mentor in the community of their choice. And mine was at the time it was called Martech, and they were a biotechnology research firm. And I went to work with them, and my work with them gave me gave me the tools to basically my project for the state science fair, and I won the state science fair. And so then went on to the international science fair, and all of that to say that was kind of like every step along the way, there was confirmation that this was what I was supposed to do. And back then they called it candy striping. I did candy striping and volunteered at the children's hospital in DC, and just made my way up into becoming a physician. And I think one more thing I'll say about it is that I had a great teacher at University of Maryland, Dr. Malat, and he gave some great advice. He said, don't pick your specialty based upon your aptitude, pick it based upon like your desires, what you're passionate about. Because some things you might be good at, but it might not be what sustains you for the rest of your life. And so when I would go through my different rotations in medicine, because as you know, when you're going through medical training, you go through all the different rotations, and you're trying to figure, one month you're on neurosurgery, another month you're on obstetrics, things like that. Every rotation I'd go on, I'd wonder what happened with that patient. Like, what's going to happen next? I'd scrub into a surgery, and then I'd move on to neurology, and I'd still be thinking about the patient. And, I'd go to pediatrics, and I'd still want to know what's going on with that kid, or, what happened to that baby we delivered last month. And so that's when I knew that family medicine was for me at the time. And so I've practiced family medicine for many, many years, have owned and operated my own practice from scratch, have done a little bit of everything. I've taught residents, students, worked per diem, have done addictions, a little bit of everything. And then in 2016, really honestly became burnt out on medicine and decided to open my own health and wellness consulting business. And so I have a health and wellness consulting business that I've been doing since 2016. And in between then, and of course, COVID came and all the other things, I've done telehealth and have had my toe a little bit in patient care. But I decided back when I opened my practice that I wanted a set of tools other than a prescription pad to help my patients. And when I went online to figure out how I could do that, I came into contact with the Center for Mind Body Medicine, which is in Washington, D.C. And I wanted something that was not considered woo-woo, I guess, that was kind of evidence-based and tried and true. And the center was founded by a Harvard-trained psychiatrist. And I was like, okay, I'm sold. And so that started me on a journey to becoming certified in mind body medicine. And then I eventually became faculty for them and became their associate clinical director and continue to supervise for them. So that was a very long-winded answer to your question, but that's me in a nutshell. I really wanted to do something that I could still touch people's lives. And my motto is I like to leave people better than how I found them. And but not have the same kind of pressures and the dregs of dealing in traditional medicine. So that's for the most part. I do a lot of public speaking, and I do teach people self-care tools, and really took what I kind of would do in the exam room. I took it outside of the exam room.
Very interesting journey. And I think, I don't know, a lot of people don't understand what family medicine is about. And I think you kind of showcased your purpose in this specialty, because it's probably the only specialty that, like you said, you look at the patient as a whole. You refer them to specialists, whatever, neurosurgery, OBGYN, whatever, and nobody knows what happens with that patient after they treat it. You're the only one who gets them back, basically. And it's like a mentor, it's like a advisor for every patient. You go back to your family practitioner and you tell him what happened. But it's a hard job. It's a hard job. And I've encountered so many of your colleagues that are miserable, unfortunately. And yourself was burned out, right? Because it's so hard to take care of a patient from top to bottom, from, years and years ongoing. How can you be successful in this business, in this specialty?
Yeah. It's a great observation. I didn't want to talk your ear off, so I could have told you more of what I do in my business, but that was really the impetus, that burnout, of what made me create my firm, Total Renaissance Wellness. Physician burnout is something that I address. Sometimes people ask me to come speak or to do different types of wellness trainings with their staff, because I think there's that saying, when you're a generalist, you know a little about a lot, and when you're a specialist, you know a lot about a little. Mm-hmm. It is something that I hope it doesn't land the wrong way, but I think if you're doing it right, you're bound to get burnt out at some point, to be honest with you, because if you really care for your patients, and you're really wanting to see them through, that takes a lot. That takes a lot out of you. And you really, in order to be able to be successful, you've got to establish boundaries, and you've got to figure out what to leave at the office and what you can take home. I mean, I literally felt like if there was a pictogram of what I was like when I finally left medicine, I would have had like a bunch of little people's arms and heads and things all over me, because I took all their stories with me. I thought about them long after I was at the office. I wondered about them. That same thing, it's kind of ironic now that I'm saying it out loud, that same thing that was kind of a gift for me to know that I wanted to do family medicine became a problem later, because you just can't encapsulate it all. And so I think the first thing, and this is something I teach in my self-care skills, is you can't address what you're not aware of. So I think in medicine as a whole, whether you're a generalist or you're a specialist, we have to start verbalizing and talking about what is happening to us as physicians. I mean, it's that physician heal thyself, right? And acknowledging, I don't know how it was for you in medical school, but we were always kind of taught to be above what you were doing, and not above in like we're better than people, but like have this removal of yourself, and just solve the problem, solve the patient. But with that came, I think, erroneously, I would say, this idea that we're not all patients too. I mean, the famous thing I say all the time is most patients aren't doctors, but all doctors are patients, right? So being able to say, hey, there's too much on my schedule today. I need a half a day to get myself together. Or, I'm this patient and I want to do what's best for them. So maybe I need to refer them to my partner because we just don't really mesh. Like you're supposed to, and it's probably similar, like as a school teacher or a priest or a police officer, like it's a job that you're called to, and you don't get to necessarily pick who you're helping. But I don't know that that's okay, because sometimes there's nothing wrong with you and there's nothing wrong with the other person, but maybe it's just not a good match.
Yeah.
I also think that it's important to honor yourself as a whole person. You're not just a machine. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I think about, the way I trained, because I trained back when it was a 120-hour work week. I had my first child 3 months before I started residency. So I would go into residency at 7 a.m. and I would come out at 7 p.m. the following day. And then I'd come home. I wouldn't sleep. I'd nurse a baby. So, things like that. And, obviously those things have changed, but I think there's still that wiring in medicine that you have to be all things to everybody at all times. And I just don't know. Well, I do know that that's not healthy,
Yeah.
and there's room. There's some amazing, one more thing I'll say, there's some amazing healing, and some of the most comforting times that I've had in my life and career have been when I've talked with patients. I always seem to I'd always say God always put the patient that I needed in the room the day that I needed it. Because we somehow strike up a conversation, and, next thing you know, they'd be saying something. I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm going through that right now. Like, so they become kind of like your family. So it's not, I don't want to paint it like it's all, drudgery, or there's wonderful things, but it is a empathetic, I think if you're doing it right, it's an empathetic, compassionate, and sometimes draining field of practice.
So, you left clinical practice and you started to do your own business.
Mhm.
Non-clinical?
How's
that going?
It's clinical in a different, it's non-traditional clinical. Let me say that.
So tell me a little bit about that. What can we expect from you right now?
Yeah. So, Total Renaissance Wellness is a health and wellness consulting firm. We pretty much have, I would say, 4 main areas of focus. The first being health and wellness consulting, and within that comes the self-care techniques. I teach a trauma-informed self-care model that is applicable to pretty much anybody, any age, anywhere. I've taught this to people all over the world. And that model, I adapt that to groups. I adapt that to staff. I adapt it to students. I adapt it to people one-on-one. Sometimes it's a small group. Sometimes it's a large group. In fact, I'm getting ready to have our first destination wellness retreat in the Grand Cayman in November. So that's a different setting. Sometimes it's one-on-one with soccer moms. Sometimes it's addressing a hospital staffing. Just all different types of ways. Health and wellness programming. So it could be as simple as coordinating and curating a health and wellness fair, where we talk about regular old health, preventive health and things like that. Or it could be a team building where we're breaking down into small groups to have better communication and to figure out what makes people tick. So it's a full gamut. The other thing that we do are allergy awareness and advocacy. I am what we call an allergy mom. I have a son who had many food allergies. He's thankfully lost a lot of them, but food allergies have been on the rise, and it can be extremely overwhelming when you are a parent, or you're an aunt or a teacher or a daycare who's like trying to figure out how do I make our environment safe for everybody. And so that's a component. Also, medical advocacy. I would find so often, and I don't know if this is the same thing for you, people ask a lot of questions, kind of curbside you, because they go to the doctor, and quite frankly, the doctor has 7 minutes to tell you all the things and figure it all out. And so I found that patients, friends, and family were leaving visits with their doctors confused and needing a debrief. And so we I speak the language that a lot of them don't have. And so we really try to help people with medical advocacy, trying to figure out like, where do I just had to move this. I did not, but I'm giving you an example, hey, I had to move my 80-year-old father into my house. What kind of bed do I need? What do I need to do? What are the services that I need to sign up for? Um,
Yeah.
and then the last piece that we really focus on is the public and inspirational speaking. I've lived quite a life. We don't have enough time for all of those things. And, I really do think that people benefit when we can all sit and share and that's why something like this is so amazing, your podcast, because most of us learn from hearing other people's stories,
Yes.
understanding how did they do that? How did they get there? What were the steps? Or sometimes it's a beautiful mess of things that come together to make somebody who they are. And so,
Yeah, exactly. I think, and I wanted to talk to you about this a little bit because your business is something that it's kind of an old-fashioned way of talking medicine to people, especially nowadays with this Dr. Google and ChatGPT that everybody, just types in or talks to Siri and finds out all the solutions and treatments and, how do you see this going? It's kind of a concerning trend, I would say, especially from the medical point of view. Like, I've heard some stories recently that people were asking ChatGPT about how to treat this and that, and they gave them the solution, and they end up in the emergency room because they took either the wrong medicine or too much of that medicine or whatever. It's so sad, But I'm just thinking, how do you see this going?
That's a great question. I was in a very big discussion with my husband last night about AI and where it's going. And, all you have to do is turn on YouTube or the TV and everything is AI, AI, AI. You got to invest in it. You got to embrace it. We use it. You got to know it. You need the programmer to do. And let me say this. I do agree with the fact that and AI is going to be the biggest disruptor that we've had since the Industrial Revolution. I just think it's already true. It's already here. So I don't think it's something to shy away from, but I do think we have to embrace it responsibly. Like most of us, I'm on Instagram or Facebook and I see some of these videos and I can't tell it's really difficult to tell what's real and what's not real. And I think that we have to have some kind of responsible, social awareness of how to engage properly. Yes, I think it's kind of like in the beginning when we had the robotic surgery, right? That sounded so strange.
Yeah.
And that was like, I'm married to an avid Star Trek person. So, that was stuff you saw in Star Trek or Battlestar. I like Battlestar Galactica. And, we figured it out. Some of the things can be done robotically. Some of them can't. It's the same thing with medicine. There's something to be said for that human interaction and that, because that was the one thing that the woman, I think she's the founder of, I don't know, she seemed very intimately involved with ChatGPT. I was thinking she was the founder, but she kept saying there's AI and then there's the fact that you have to program your AI to work best for you. And I was like, oh, good. Finally, something human. I'm glad you're saying that because otherwise it's just a computer that's listening to information and it's jumbling it up and it's spitting it back to you. It's not, you need it to be personalized. It needs to be able, and even with that, like I tell my daughter, she's a young adult, but I'm like, I need you to still, when you drive, I need you to look around and know where you're going because this nav will sometimes have you going through somebody's backyard clothesline if you're not paying attention, right? Because it shaved off of, 5 nanoseconds of time. And I think there's just something to be said for us, especially as physicians, keeping that human contact with our patients and saying, hey, this is when this is appropriate. This is when it's not appropriate. If you're having XYZ, I want a phone call. I want you to talk to me. I want you to, reach out. If you're having this, maybe follow these few things, but then after that, still come check in with me. Because it just seems a little bit like, what I'll say, Dr. Franco, like, what's the goal line? What's the goalpost? Are we trying to make it so that, because she yesterday was literally talking about the fact that people have entire AI staffs now. Like, so they make the little avatars and they're not actual people, they're avatars. And she was like, so, you can talk to me when I'm asleep, 24 hours a day. And it's kind of like, it was framed as it's convenience, but what are you giving up for that convenience? Right. I mean, so I just think, as a patient, as a provider, you still have to establish and nurture that connection, because
I can imagine this thing is going to go away. Like you said, the human connection is probably the most important thing for a patient.
Mhm.
Like when you go to the doctor, you don't go into an MRI machine. You go into a room with a human being.
Mhm.
So you want some kind of compassion, some kind of understanding, explanation, like reasoning, all this type of stuff that and emotions. Like when you take emotions out of a medical office,
Mhm.
why do you go there? Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's just, I can't see this happening in the future. And that's why I'm interested for businesses like yourself right now with the health and wellness, because this is going to progress in a way that people, people want information and want, the correct treatments and whatever, but they also need this kind of human interaction with their medical doctor that they cannot get through a chat GPT conversation. And that's why I think it's important for you guys to like move this forward in family medicine, especially. And I wanted to ask you regarding this that, you've been through a lot in your practice, and I'm sure you've seen successful stories, but you also had some weird things happening. I wouldn't say failures. I would say setbacks. Um, any examples of this that you can give us, like, in terms of your experience and say, okay, this happened to me, I learned from it, and I move forward?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, the number one thing that is that you're talking is my personal practice. I built a practice from scratch. It took about a year before I opened. So back in 2006, I was working in a federally qualified health center. If anybody knows anything about that, can be a challenging place to work because um, you are working with a largely disadvantaged population. Um, People have a lot of ailments, a lot of medications. The people are amazing. It's not the people, it's that often you're trying to maximize seeing as many people as you can. Um, and then in my particular case, I was also teaching students and residents. Well, those don't really go together. Productivity and teaching don't go together because you have to be able to take the time to really stop and say, okay, this is what did you see? This is what I saw. What did you hear when the patient said this? This is so I had really was like, you know what, I want to do this differently. And let me say, I have always been entrepreneurially minded. I mean, I remember having a dog walking service and babysitting service at 9. Now, I'm going to tell you, I don't know who was having me babysit at 9, but I did it. I mean, I was good at it. But I mean, as a mother now, I would never do that. I would never do that. Me and my friend, the two of us would go and we would babysit like babies. Um, but anyway, and I did that for many years. Um, so I said, I want to do this differently. I want to see people differently. I want to have some autonomy over what I can say and do with patients. And so I built this practice, and everybody at the time was like, "You're crazy," and I was like, "No, I'm a dreamer." And um, so I opened the practice in 2007. I had not a single patient. Grew the practice from 0 to over 1,500 patients. Um, it was aesthetically beautiful. I had a water wall. We played spa music. I mean, people literally, other docs would bring their office managers over to see my practice because it was just the way we designed it. It was just, I mean, when I tell you, I picked up every textile, everything. And it on the outside, it looked like it was very successful. And in a lot of ways, it was. Um, and I'm going to get to your question, but I do want to say this because it's something you said earlier. And one thing that I did that I think at the time, there were two things that were kind of unheard of. Number one, I had an electronic medical record, which I was one of the first in the county to get that. Like people didn't have that. And two, I went out and interviewed every specialist that I referred to. So usually the specialists come to the primaries because they want you to refer to them. I went to them because I wanted to know where I was sending Mrs. Jones. I wanted to know, does this place have steps? Is it a place that they are going to feel safe. Is it a small office? Is it a big office? And that was like unheard of. All the specialists were like, this is so cool. Like no one does this for us, you know, but it was great because it helped me to build business, and it helped me to feel like I was giving people, my tagline at the time was compassionate, comprehensive care with a compassionate flair. And so I built this practice. It was great, but the practice opened in November of 2007. And that was right before the big recession, the bubble burst in 2008. You know, at the time, everyone was like, oh, you know, it's going to go up, up and up. It's never going to end, right? This is when all that stuff was going on. Well, people don't think of their doctor's office as a business. People don't realize, like, I had mortgage, I had to pay people, I had, you know, bills and responsibilities just like everyone else. And so people would literally be making life decisions like, should I give Dr. Greenwood my $30 copay, or should I keep the water on? And I felt that, like, that was a real thing. And so, you know, the practice was open for almost 4 years, but I had to close its doors. And it was literally like I had lost a piece of me. Like I mourned that closure.
Yeah.
And it made me at the time feel like I had failed. And it was a friend of mine's father who is an entrepreneur. He's a very successful entrepreneur. I was talking to him about something, and he said, you can't purchase what you've just done. You cannot purchase that experience.
Yeah.
That you just went through an amazing journey of entrepreneurship, like, and betting on yourself. Don't ever walk around with your head down because you did an extraordinary thing that most people are not even, they just wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
And that's when I really, so when you ask, like, what did I learn? I mean, I learned a lot about myself. I learned that I genuinely like being an entrepreneur. I knew, because even when I thought to open Total Renaissance Wellness, I was kind of like frustrated with myself because I'm like, you've been down this road. Why would you do this again? You know where this comes from. And it was my mom who, one of the things we work with in Mind Body Medicine is genograms. And I had done a genogram. It's basically a fancy word for a family tree, but you interact with it differently. Excuse me. And she said, I was like, Mom, I don't know what's wrong with me. Why am I wanting to do this again? And she just very casually, as moms do, she's like, of course you do. She's like, it's in your blood. And I was like, what do you mean? And I looked at my genogram, and it was. My grandfather owned dry cleaning businesses back when that was not something that an African-American man could do. He owned 3 dry cleaning businesses in New York City. My aunt had her own hairdressing business. My other aunt had a music teaching lessons for church business. My grandfather had his own barbershop. So, I mean, it was, when you talk about what did I learn, I've learned so many things. Sometimes what feels like a valley is really full of value.
That's very well said. Yeah.
And so I try to approach anything that I do now. I mean, I learned all kinds of other things, like, you know, not putting, be careful where you get your money from. Like, you know, be careful how much you leverage before it shows up for you. I mean, there's all kinds of business things that I could say that I learned, but overall, I learned that for the most part, anything that we're faced with in this life, or that we go through, or that might be a challenge, is ultimately, in some ways, can end up being a real blessing.
You could not be this successful if you would not have that kind of experience in your past, especially as a woman. I would say minority woman entrepreneur. It's so important for people to understand that, especially in our society. And I congratulate you for that, because it's not easy in any respect to do that. And I think, you know, if someone is complaining that they cannot do this for some reason, they should look at you. And you could be a very good example for a lot of people that doubt themselves, going from burnout to getting, you know, your office closed, being a mom, being a doctor, you know, and starting a different other business in that same space. It's something to take your hat off to. So
Thank you. I
let
appreciate
me
that so much.
no, absolutely. And I think this is one of the goals of this podcast, to show people what can be done. Not necessarily what we cannot do, but there's so many things we believe we can't, and we end up doing them very well. So I would ask you, with all the experience that you have right now and the things you have under your belt, if you would look back when you were young and you started this whole thing, what kind of advice would you give to yourself?
Oh my goodness. Well, first thing I would say is, and this is going to sound so trite because everyone says it, but I'm saying it is don't sweat the small stuff. I don't know that it's all small stuff. I don't know about that part, but there's a lot of things that I stressed over that I wouldn't stress over now. I would also say to her, keep your eye on the prize. Because it's easy to get distracted by all this other stuff. And I would say each day brings a new hope, because it's easy to feel like you are your past, or you are your mistakes, or you are these things that in the moment feel like they're so insurmountable, and you just don't know, how am I going to put one foot in front of the other? And we're all born with gifts. We're all born with, I think, the innate ability to reach for our higher good. I remember when I left medical practice and I was like, I didn't have a job. And I was like, what am I doing? And that's when I wrote my first book. It's not the greatest book, but it's mine, and I wrote it. I need to update it and do a new one. But that was a lesson of, no one can take away from me what my experiences and what it was to be me. Like, that all lives up here. Every time I saw a patient, every time I comforted a patient, every time I, filled out some sort of permit to open the practice, or every salesperson I met with, all of that lives in me. And it's up to me to take those experiences and to take that knowledge and reformulate it for the greater good. And that was one of the things that, Total Renaissance is, we take what I did in the exam room outside for the masses. I mean, no, I don't prescribe. I don't write prescriptions anymore. I don't diagnose, but I do treat people in a different way. And that was a realization. That's something I would tell my younger self, that don't play small in who you are and what you've been through and what you have to offer. Because it might not look exactly like, someone else says it's supposed to look. This world is a classroom, right?
Absolutely. And, you have an amazing story. And the fact that you kind of reinvented yourself out of this, burnout situation and, closing the practice, it's amazing. And I think, like you said, you help people a different way. How can people reach out to you and learn more about your practice?
Great. So I have a website. It's www.inspirehealthwellness.com. I am on Instagram at Total Renaissance Wellness. You'll see me on there. And I'm also on Facebook under Total Renaissance Wellness, as well as LinkedIn under Dr. Lindiwe Greenwood. Yeah.
I would definitely recommend people to check out what you're doing right now. It's an interesting medical enterprise, I would say, and I think the family medicine is evolving towards that kind of practice. More people want to reach out to like more of a personal approach, independent of offices and hospitals and all this stuff. So I think the personal enterprise at the small business level, it's very important in a one-to-one medical interaction. Thank you so much, Lindiwe. I appreciate you coming over, and hopefully we'll check out your practice later on during the year.
That sounds wonderful. And thank you so much for having me as a guest. I feel honored.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Are you a busy medical professional striving to excel in life and work? Stellar Success Podcast brings you the habits and insights of top leaders in medicine and beyond. Discover strategies for balance, growth, and fulfillment in every episode. Follow us on Instagram at Stellar Success Podcast for daily inspiration. Start your journey to success today. Subscribe to the YouTube channel now.
That's a wrap on Stellar Success, Leveling Up for Medical Pros with Dr. Tudor Franku. Interested in joining us? Go to stellarsuccesspodcast.com/guest to apply. Stay stellar and level up.